conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He is the founder and CEO at Inner Voice Analytics, no other than Mr. Nick Montalbine.
Hey Daniel, how you doing?
I'm fabulous and excellent, Mr. Nick. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, sure. No, happy to. I'm glad to be here. So, to Nick Montalbine, I lead an organization called Inner Voice Analytics, where we really focus on two things. We focus on continuous employee listening, right? A lot of organizations, they listen to their employees maybe once, four times a year through a traditional engagement survey tools. Employee sentiment moves way too fast. We're that organization that will help you listen to your organizations at all points throughout the employee journey, at all moments, making sure you're retaining your top talent. So that's part one of what we do. Part two of what we do is also kind of help demystify the AI workplace. So we work with organizations on traditional machine learning, but then we are looking to bridge organizations into more of the newer technologies out there, like conversational AI, chatbot related stuff. Um, Generative AI, similar to stuff to ChatGPT, and then that stuff that I think a lot of us are scared about, agentic AI. A lot of the AI that can go ahead and actually execute work for you. So that's what we do at Inner Voice Analytics. Before Inner Voice Analytics, I led talent planning and people analytics for a healthcare system out here in Portland, Oregon. And prior to that, I was in the world of executive coaching. And then before that, I was at Nike, where I led HR strategy, primarily focused on retail and their digital organizations.
Well, Mr. Nick, I want to apologize to mispronounce your last name, but Mr. Nick Montalbine, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about what 200 exit interviews taught me about culture. The exit interview is famously flawed ritual, often sugar coated. How did you create an environment or ask questions in a way that allowed people to finally speak the unvarnished truth that they held back for months or years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because you're right. Traditional exit interviews, they're old, they're stale. We actually call them obituaries because the information that
Mhm.
you get from them are typically just not useful. They're just dead on arrival. The beauty about us as Inner Voice Analytics is that we're a neutral third party. So the fact that we're a neutral third party, we don't know all the dynamics, all the politics in the organization. So a lot of people will typically open up to us, and they'll tell us things that they probably wouldn't have told an HR representative, as for an example. The other thing that we're doing that allows us to get these deep insights is that we don't do this via email. We don't do this via survey. We do this via a 30-minute conversation where we're able to follow the energy of the employee that is leaving. Our belief is that the art of the conversation is lost nowadays. And we are trying to bring back that one on one connection that allows us to go deep in spaces and really understand the root of why people are leaving organizations, which, by the way, a lot of the reasons are preventable.
Mhm. Very well said, and you need an applause for that, Mr. Nick. Truly, truly empowering and straight from the heart. Beyond the stated reason of for living, what were the deeper, more subtle themes of disconnection that surface again and again? What is the often death by thousands paper caps?
Yeah, I think it's people. Well, first of all, you're right. I mean, you hit the word living, right? We spend so much of our time in the workplace, 40 hours typically at a minimum, where the time that you spent there should be fun. It should be inviting. You should be rewarding. You're away from your loved ones and your family and friends and things that you really want to be doing. I think what we're seeing is one deep connection or not understand how particular roles fit into the broader workplace. They don't understand how their work contributes to the bigger strategy. Nobody wants to go ahead and go be a cog in the wheel. Um, they also don't understand the typical dynamics of the organization, or they're not understanding where leadership plays an important role. They're not seeing leaders come on in and be authentic and truthful about things as well. One the other big thing that we have, a big theme that we're seeing here is around career. Um, they don't understand how their job can translate into multiple areas, or how, if they were to gain skills and capabilities, how does that translate to a promotion or other jobs. Organizations just are struggling communicating that as well. So really, it's like, for us, what we're seeing is it boils down to connection to strategy, leadership presence, and understand how individuals can go ahead and go navigate their career in increasingly complex organizations.
Hmm. Interesting, Mr. Nick. So, was there a moment in your research where you realized that what people were actually living was not the job, but a specific person or a broken process that leadership was blind to?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things that we've seen is that when people leave organizations to go from, I'll take the hospital world, for example. I could be working at one hospital system and I can go across the street to another hospital for an extra couple dollars an hour. And don't get me wrong, I'm not scoffing at an extra couple dollars an hour, but the amount of churn and change that ends up happening is significant. I think people have a lot of buyer's remorse of it. So I think, really, it's boiling down to people not feeling like they're heard. They're not seeing action um, um, taken by leaders. They're seeing um, increasingly complex decision making taking place, right? Where it takes a monumental effort just to get a new notebook, as an example, right? I think that's what people are getting fed up with. So that's what we're starting to see in our research.
And Mr. Nick, let's talk about the telltale signs of a culture in trouble. Looking back, what are the early warning signals in those interviews, the phrases or the hesitations, the small things mentioned that consistently pointed a larger cultural cancer before it was widely acknowledged?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Um, those cultural cracks that we're seeing is when people start withdrawing their true sentiment or their true opinions, right? They start holding on to those things that they really want to say, but they don't say. They start withholding ideas on how to improve the organization. They start maybe slowing down their initiative a little bit, right? Meetings start becoming a little bit more silent and just accepting versus that healthy debate that that I think show a really healthy culture. And those are the things that maybe start to drive that disengagement in individuals, where all of a sudden they may go ahead and go start jumping on platforms like LinkedIn, where they go ahead and go start browsing for opportunities. Then they look at opportunities and maybe it plants a seed in their head of like, well, maybe I'll just go ahead and go update my resume a little bit. So they go ahead and go update their resume, which then ultimately leads to, maybe I will click that apply, or maybe I will take that call from a headhunter where in the past I would have ignored it a little bit, right? So those are
Mhm.
the cultural things that we're starting to see. It's really around people starting to withdrawing from their energy. They're withdrawing their ideas. They're withdrawing just that general debate, and just wanting just to maybe just go a little bit more inward.
So, Mr. Nick, how did you learn about the role of middle management? Do you emerge the crucial amplifiers of a culture, or more often, the primary point of a failure where good intention from the top went to die?
Yeah, so you're 100% right. I mean, I think that middle management layer is key. And I think what we see and what I've historically seen in my career is there's not a lot of investment in that middle management layer, right? That where these are individuals where maybe they've had one role where they had responsibility for leading teams. Maybe they didn't necessarily get the right coaching and support in terms of how to go ahead and truly listen to the team, or what levers they could go ahead and go use to help lead, drive, and inspire their teams. So I think that's a huge piece of this. It's just the lack of investment in that middle management layer, because that is actually one of those critical layers in the organization, because they are really connecting with that front line or that first line of employees who are really, really close to the work. And they're supposed to go ahead and go translate a lot of the sentiment that is going on to upper management. And that's that link that's broken, where sometimes middle management, they end up taking a lot of the information that should be escalated, and they may make it a little bit more rosy, or they may make it they may soften the tone of the exact messaging, because maybe they have their own fears in terms how upper management may react to that feedback.
Mr. Nick, we often talk about money and titles. Beyond on 200 conversations, what are the non-negotiable human needs? Things like respect, agency, or feeling seen, whose absence is far likely to drive a talented person out the door.
Yeah, no, I think it's not necessarily to your point. It's not, look, money, you needing to be able to pay your bills is utmost, right? Is first and foremost, right? But that's not necessarily the things that keep people there. So the things that do keep people there are environments where it's psychologically safe. So what does that mean, right? I can go ahead and go voice my opinion. I can go ahead and go challenge in an appropriate and respectful manner without fear of some sort of repercussion, right? So that psychological safety is key, right? But other things that are absolutely key is making sure that you're involved in that meaningful work, right? How do I make sure that the time I'm spending away from my family, my friends, the things that I really want to be doing, that it's worth it, right? So how do I work on interesting projects that make me better as an individual, where I'm getting skills and capabilities in my proverbial backpack that make me more attractive for future roles? So I think that leads into the next piece of career growth, right? So I'm working
Mhm.
on cool stuff, I'm growing. How can I go ahead and continue to work through an organization? Um, and be successful, because going back to what I said earlier, jumping across the street to another job where they may pay you $10,000 more a year, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not scoffing on that, that's not necessarily what's going to drive that. I feel valued, I feel like this is a place for me, I have a sense of community as well. So again, that sense of community is super important as well, where I feel like I'm part of a team that cares about me, that cares in my investment, that we want to succeed together, right? Those are the things that I believe start to make for those elements of an organization where people want to stay.
Certainly. So let's talk about the methodology of the one who got away. How often did high performers cite a lack of intellectual challenge or a poor work quality as a reason for leaving versus the classic assumption that they always poach for more money?
Yeah, it's a big thing, and that's what we're seeing. Like 95% of the high performers that we see leave organizations, they're not necessarily leaving for more money, right? They're leaving because they don't feel like that their talent is valued, and they don't see the upward mobility that they want to see. Because I think sometimes in organizations, sometimes wrong people get promoted into roles, and they end up becoming what we typically call blockers in an organization, where there's no more movement, and then people get frustrated because they get bored. High performers get bored in their roles. Let's start to acknowledge that, right? So
Mhm.
when they start getting bored, and they want to go ahead and go start looking at other opportunities, that's where you essentially lost them. The resignation letter that comes across your desk isn't something that started like a week or two ago. It's something that started months, if not years ago, for high performers
Mhm.
specifically.
So, Mr. Nick, did the data reveal a pattern about Timing. Was there a common tenure mark or a specific event means something or after which is a psychological exit happened along before the physical one?
Yeah, it's another great question. So if we kind of separate this part of this conversation into two buckets, right? If we kind of think about high performers in one bucket and maybe a general population in another bucket, we do see that the first 90 days of employees coming into the organization is where people are critically at risk for leaving an organization in those first 90 days, which just kind of continues to reinforce the importance of onboarding. And what we're seeing in those first 90 days is that when individuals do not have clear roles and responsibilities, right, they don't have access to the information that they need to do their job. When things are unclear about their performance expectations, when managers aren't present for them to ask questions in a safe manner, all of those things start to become those points where those are individuals that start to become at risk, right? And this is where I think, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about with inner voice analytics, the AI side of it, right? This is where there's some great applications for artificial intelligence in starting to predict who of your new employees specifically are at risk of potentially leaving within a certain time frame, in this case 90 days.
Interesting, Mr. Nick. So let's talk about the mirror for leadership. If you could synthesize the 200 interviews into a brutally honest memo to every CEO, what would it be the headline be, and what are the top two pieces of the right feedback they need to hear?
Yeah, I think leadership is first, leadership is very complicated. It's very challenging. It's leading can be very, very lonely. So I first want to go ahead and go acknowledge that. Right. And this also kind of goes back to when I was executive coaching, working with C-suite leaders, right? There's a lot that individuals or leaders are managing. So I think we need to acknowledge that. But really, if we were to go ahead and go boil down, what are like the four things leaders need to do well and keep an eye on? I would boil it down to the following. One, they need to go ahead and go create the future, which is that strategy orientation to the organization, right? Where is it going in the future? Second, they need to have a pulse on the business, running the day to day, the operations side of it. Third, they need to go ahead and go understand the team aspect of the culture of the organization, right? What's getting rewarded? What's getting punished? How are people feeling, etc. The fourth thing leaders need to go ahead and go do is have tremendous self care, right? And what's interesting about those four things is you need, as a leader, to provide equal pressure on all of those. Because if you think about those as like a table, if I put too much pressure on one of those legs, right? Let's just say I'm a great leader and I'm so good at focusing on the day to day and that operational side of it, that table is going to go ahead and go break. And that's what's happening with a lot of organizations is that you have leaders who are really good at maybe one or two of those things, and they're not applying equal pressure to all of it, and that's where that imbalance starts to take place, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's my advice to leaders is I would start to inventory, how do you feel like you are spending your time in terms of creating the future, running the business, leading the team, and then your own self-care. And if you feel like you're spending too much weight on one of those, then I guarantee the rest of the organization is imbalanced in some capacity.
In balance, indeed. So turning insight into action, fixing the leaks, Mr. Knight. Based on the treasure trove of truth, what is the one concrete, immediate change any manager can make tomorrow to significantly reduce the chance the next star performer ends up in the exit interview?
Make sure you're having career conversations with those high performers, right? Make sure you're making sure that you're giving them those stretch opportunities and you're feeding their growth. That's one of the easiest things to go ahead and go try to do as a leader or as a manager in terms of your employees, and try to find creative ways to invest in them. I know money and dollars are tight in organizations, but there are lots of other resources out there that you can try to go ahead and go deploy to go ahead and go make sure that they're feeling challenged.
Feeling challenged. Yes, the best insight are preventative. What's the interview questions are regularly check in practice. These research inspired to address issue while the employee is still in the building and invested.
I'm sorry, you said what are the questions that managers can ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think it's simple things in terms of how are you feeling about your role? Are you excited to be here? Do you feel like that we're investing in you? Do you feel like you're being changed? Are you enjoying the work that you're dealing with? Right? Do you understand how your work connects to that broader picture, to that broader strategy? If they can't answer that question, then I would, as a leader, I would want to work really, really hard to show how the work that they're doing contributes to that broader strategy.
Very well said, Mr. Nick. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in a third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season too, geography 101 love letters, Movie 101 review, Music 101 are in fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in fourth season, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, of course, my Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcast. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Nick, the patterns emerge about which teams or departments had shockingly low exit interview condor or concerning patterns. What does the silence itself tell you about these microcultures?
Microcultures are extremely important in organizations, and they should be acknowledged and respected. I think that you should have that overall culture of an organization, but you should also be able to go ahead and go have those microcultures. I think that's the other part where we're using AI, is to start to show that there are there are certain teams and organizations that might be more at risk with others, which then can lead us to believe whether or not there are certain manager interventions that need to take place before things get worse. So also within our data, we're not necessarily seeing particular roles turning over more often than not. But what we are do see is that, like, hey, the whole concept of microcultures is absolute, and it should be something that's acknowledged. I think you're muted, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Nick. Thank you for saying that. Listening to 200 stories of departure and delusion, mental savvy. How did these projects change you personally? Your own leadership style, your relationship with your work, or your empathy for people navigating corporate life?
Oh, I think it's 100% changed in terms of how I do lead and how I would lead if I were to go back to the corporate America side of it. And when I say that, it's more so about how am I creating that environment for success for people? How am I creating that environment where everybody wants to show up and just do the best because they're having fun at work? And I think that's what this all boils down to. That's my mission. It's in terms of how do we make sure we're bringing fun back into the workplace.
Indeed. So, Mr. Nick, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever project that you're doing right now? And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Yeah, no, great to be here, and I appreciate it. And feel free to check us out at innervoiceanalytics.com. There's a free assessment on there where you could look at how well do you think your organization is at reacting to continuous employee listening.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Nick Montalbine because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So I have one more question, Mr. Nick. Looking at the full arc of 200 interviews, what is the single most important irreducible element of a healthy magnetic culture that, if present, make it all other problems manageable, and if its absence makes even best perks meaningless?
Yeah, I think investing in leadership, leadership coaching, investing in leadership and how to lead, how leaders lead, how they drive the organization, how they inspire the organization. I can't speak enough about the importance of investing in leadership.
Yes, people. Leadership, leadership, leadership. So, Mr. Link, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, people. See you soon.